meeting is being recorded.
All right, welcome everyone to our second monthly governance call. Excited to keep this going. So I wanted to start just, I know this is it's the governance call, not a community call, but I wanted to just quickly acknowledge that we won a parachain, which is very exciting. So big congrats and thanks to the community for turning out in full force. Yeah, and for the team and everyone, I think we had, if not the most, then close to the most individual contributions, which is pretty awesome. So just wanted to acknowledge that very quickly. Today on the agenda, we have an update actually, which is related to us getting a parachain, which is we're going to have a transition from validators to collators, and we're going to have Cassidy give us an update on that transition and how that works, as well as some further updates on Runtime Upgrade 4 for Altair. We're also very happy to have Raul from the Polkadot Councillor here, who's going to give us, hi Raul, going to give us a chance to do a Q&A to get some insight on governance practices and just that whole world in general. And I will also be doing a refresher, kind of a quick walkthrough on the governance process. I'll go ahead and share my screen and just do a quick walkthrough kind of tutorial on that for those who are new to the process or maybe need a refresher. So, and we also have an update on a slashing event that happened that we're going to comment on as well. So, I think we'll go ahead and start off with the information on the transition from validators to collators. If Cassidy is here and wants to get started on that.
Yeah. Hey everyone.
Hey Cassidy.
So I don't have super concrete stuff to give you yet, so stay tuned for that. We'll definitely be putting together more solid information that you can follow. Probably can expect that within the next week here. But the basics are that collators right now on Altair and then in the future on Centrifuge chain are going to start off as being controlled through democracy, which is one of the big topics, obviously, of this call. And in order for us to get the most community involvement that we can, what we'd like for either if you're a current validator or you're just interested in becoming a collator, to introduce yourself on the forum just like validators have been doing. And so right now there's a section on the governance forum that's linked in the chat, just linking to the agenda so far, but this will now become a section for collators to introduce themselves. And this is so that through democracy, so basically for the council to put together a set of the initial collators that we can have on chain and propose that for all of the token holders to actually vote on and bring in the first handful of collators. So it'll probably start off relatively small and it can definitely grow from there. But important to note here is that it's not what we know so far through the staking process. That's something that's still being developed on Substrate that we're keeping a close eye on. So in the beginning, the way that's implemented is, again, through your community token holder governance. I don't have too much more information to share unless there's specific questions, but we'll definitely be getting you better information, more information in the coming week here.
Okay, sounds good. Looking forward to that. Anybody have any questions on that? Okay. Can we also get some? I know we wanted to get some updates also on the next steps for Runtime Upgrade 4 for Altair. Look, I believe the democracy vote is close to being finished. Is that right?
Yeah.
Or close to closing?
Yeah, I think you may have noticed that it was a little bit longer than expected, and that was due to the block times being much longer than expected, and that has now been pretty much fixed. And shout out to Miguel on our team and Guillermo for figuring that out. I think we can expect this about, I think morning tomorrow European time, if I remember correctly, is the current estimate for when that will actually end up going live.
Cassidy, just to tell Miguel here, it's just pretty much going to be done in the next 7 hours.
Oh, okay, cool.
6 hours plus a little bit of bandwidth of our block time is not, well, pretty much all the parachains in the ecosystem are not fitting the 12-second because of, Kusama is a bit more hogged a bit at the moment, and variety of reasons networking wise. So we are in around like 13, 14 seconds. So more or less it's around like, 7 hours from now.
Awesome, thanks for correcting me.
Maybe Miguel, have you already shared sort of like why block time was significantly longer in the past? Is there a forum post that you want to link to or give a quick explanation here? I think that would be helpful for anyone that's been wondering so far.
I think I posted it in the governance summary, one paragraph of what we think it happened. But essentially, like, we have just a few collators, and one of them was not syncing properly, and we didn't catch that on time. So the reason that one collator was not producing blocks, and Aura, which is a consensus that we use, is a bit more simple, and we basically 1/3 of the blocks were not produced on time. That means that if we are aiming to basically, there's like 6 to 12 seconds that are thrown away almost every time that there is that collator time to produce a block. So that basically increased the block time significantly to 30-40% of the increase, 30 to 40% of the 12-second mark, which puts us in 17-18 seconds in average. So that was the reason why with the increase on the block time. I can write a post as well, but I think that paragraph probably is enough. But we have already put things in place to try to avoid this from happening. And adding more collators will alleviate that a little bit too.
Okay.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, thanks, Miguel. Lucas, were you saying something else? Okay. Yeah, so we're just right around the corner from the democracy vote finishing up, and Cassidy or anybody else, did you want to give us any more information on what happens next?
So maybe I've one, while we're on the topic of collators. Cassidy, is there anything we could share already on the number of collators we want to have?
So we're looking at starting with a handful at first, so probably around 5 is a good starting point. If there's a huge amount of interest, we can really quickly increase that, for example, to 10, but basically want to start off small, let the chain actually adjust, make sure that there's a smooth and secure onboarding of the new collators, and move forward slowly from there. I know we have 60 validators now on Centrifuge chain. We don't have anyone running on Altair yet, but This is for Altair, starting off smaller. And then based on how this process goes, that can also inform how we do this process on Centrifuge as well.
Okay, sounds good. And so should we give people some information on once the democracy vote is closed up and finished? Will we then enter an enactment period, and then what happens next for the next steps?
So this runtime upgrade doesn't have an enactment period, which is due to the fact that we did this fast track, and that was on purpose so that there wouldn't be a delay there. And from here, the next really exciting piece that's coming is NFT Studio, and definitely look out for some more news coming on that in the next couple of weeks here too. So from here, it is probably about a week, maybe up to 2 weeks of period from this runtime upgrade before NFT Studio gets launched, just so we can make sure that there's nothing that goes wrong on the chain and everything's running smoothly. And then from there, yeah, launching NFT Studio and seeing the community really start to get involved there and see what everyone can create.
All right, great. So yeah, before we move on, did anybody have any questions or comments about Runtime Upgrade 4, what's coming next? If not, what I'll do now is I'm going to go ahead and just give a little refresher on the process for governance, for creating a poll and setting up a proposal. This might be good for people to see who are new to the process. I know it can be a little bit overwhelming probably sometimes for people who are new to it. Or maybe just a refresher for people who need to see the process again. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and this will be brief. I'm just going to give a brief overview of how our governance process works. So let's see. Okay. Just one moment, please. Everyone can see that all right? All right, awesome.
We see,
all right, so, yeah.
We see the Zoom screen.
Okay, sorry about that. Here we go. So here's our forum. I wanted to start by just quickly commenting that we have first an off-chain process where we post in the forum, post in the Discord, get a feel for what people might think about your proposal, and also go in here and so we can go in here and create a new topic under governance and proposals. I'm not actually going to create a topic here, but we can just say topic or proposal 1, etc. Then you can go in and create a poll. So that would then allow people to vote here in the forum on your proposal. And I wanted to articulate something that Ash mentioned in a few community calls ago, I think back in October, that there is a really solid purpose to doing this, and that is posting off-chain first in the forum where people can comment and give feedback is useful because it gives us a clearer idea of what the proposal is, what we're trying to do there, And also, in case there's any mistakes, in case there's any sort of miscommunication or mistakes, doing it. We've had examples in the past where people have gone directly on chain first. I think the example back then was that someone wanted to increase the validator set by 60, and when in fact we only had about 25 validators on the waiting list. So and the current set at that time was 50, I believe. So that very well could have been a mistake. That could have been avoided if posted in the forum first. Yeah. So, and also not only that, but posting in the forum and in the Discord and in the appropriate channels gives the person proposing a chance to garner more votes, to actually build some consensus around that, and that gives the proposal, of course, a higher chance of passing, and then also, of course, then moving on chain. So once you post in the forum, you give at least a few days. I think it's usually a week for the proposal for the poll to get results. If it passes, then you can go on chain to the portal here and go to governance and democracy. And of course, we have we'll post links for the documentation that goes into more detail about this process. But effectively, what you do is you click submit pre-image. You go through the list and find the action you want to take. You take the pre-image hash, copy that, submit proposal, paste the pre-image hash, submit, and then once you do that, if anyone wants to correct me here, then you go ahead and actually submit the pre-image. At which point, once it's on chain, it needs to be seconded, which means that someone else needs to go through and kind of support that proposal, second it, at which point it becomes a referenda that people can vote on. So yeah, that's the basic overview of the process there. If I missed anything or anybody wants to comment on that, please let me know.
I think Raul made a comment about the pre-image. Do you want to talk to that?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but I don't know if it works like this as well. On the relay chain, you can basically submit a pre-image, even if the proposal is not yet up for vote. So then the pre-image will be stored, you pay the fee. And then when you submit the proposal with the same pre-image hash, the chain automatically takes the image that you already submitted and pairs it with the proposal. So then you don't have to go back again to submit the pre-image.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's correct. It works the same way. Yeah.
I just wanted to add that often we also encourage at the very start of this whole process, even before you do the poll, to do a bit of a temperature check in the forum, just like, you're hashing out your idea and you want to get just a bit of feedback about whether this is something you want to go forward with. So a temperature check it's not mandatory, but it can also be helpful ahead of this whole process to just get, to gauge the temperature of like the community on what you're proposing to do.
Yeah, we definitely have, our governance channels in the Discord where people can start a discussion and do a temperature check there, and also just start a discussion on the forum, allow people to comment, and just get a feel for how much support there might be for that proposal. Okay, so I think we're going at a pretty fast pace here. I think it might be time for us to do a little Q&A with Raul from the Polkadot Council. Are there any other items we wanted to cover before that?
Was there a slashing incident? Do we want to?
Yes. Sorry, yeah. We did want to comment. There was a slashing incident that we needed to address. Who can we have comments on that?
Maybe Miguel, do you want to talk about the slashing?
Miguel?
I don't know if you're
Yeah.
not on the spot.
Yeah, thanks.
No, I mean it's a bit uncertain of like the sequence of events, but essentially there was chorus one, a validator was basically went down, and then when it started up, it sort of incurred in a double signing equivocation, and like digging deeper on it a little bit, we found out that there was a well-known bug in a version that's more than a year old, which is our current version of Substrate for the standalone chain. So we thought that was a legitimate bug, basically. So not a misbehaving or like a lack of like a better structure of the current validator setup. So we proposed the council to cancel the slashing. So that was the cost. It's something that it was built in the code, so we thought it was fair to propose the cancel the event, the slashing event.
Okay, yeah, thanks for the clarification on that.
The vote has passed, Miguel, right? The council motion.
Yeah, it passed yesterday, yesterday.
Okay. Okay, well, yeah, thanks for that, Miguel. And yeah, so is there anything else we need to cover before we move on? No, all good. Okay, so I would like to introduce Raul from the Polkadot Council. He is going to give us some insight on governance practices and how it's done for Polkadot as well. Raul, if you could just give us a little bit of background on yourself and what you do for the Polkadot Council, that would be great, and then we can open up the floor to some questions.
Sure. Well, I don't know why I'm here, because you have the newest Polkadot Council member here on the call as well, Lucas. So, but well. So my name is Raul, and I've been working on Polkadot since the beginning. I started working on Parity in 2015 when it was called ETHCore. And before that, I was working in the Ethereum Foundation office here in Berlin. And my job is, I'm a council member of both Polkadot and Kusama. And my job is basically a combination of community manager and project manager. Basically, what I do is try to link the needs of the technical teams to the governance side of things and the democracy module, so we can get legislation passed according to the needs and the development of the networks. And in that sense, I try to distribute information to the voters and to nominators and validators. And I'm also in charge of, I advise teams that want to submit their proposals for Treasury in Polkadot and Kusama. and I advise them on the process, on how to do so, what's the difference between the off-chain process that you also have and the on-chain processes. And I do that with a colleague of mine that's also part of my team, which is Altair, which I think he's here in this call. So yeah, that's basically what I do. I've been doing that for 2 years now. I started on Kusama because Kusama was first, and then on Polkadot. So yeah, I'm happy to be here and discuss what are the challenges on on-chain governance.
Yeah, thanks for being here. We really appreciate it. So were there any questions from anyone here in this meeting that we can get to first?
So Lucas has already a question there in the channel, apparently.
Maybe we can start. Maybe let's start a bit softer for now.
Yeah,
we can go to that later.
We can go gradual. Yeah, that's fine.
But I did want to actually. I was smiling a lot recently. I checked one of our Centrifuge dot addresses. And I looked because it was the one where we got the grant for GSRPC, the Go substrate client.
Yeah.
And so I was like looking back at Polkadot Transaction Explorer, and I saw actually that we submitted the 4th treasury proposal ever on Polkadot.
Yeah.
And I think at the time it was $50,000 worth of DOT to build this library. So, which is basically at the time, we were still using a lot of Go actually at Centrifuge. And so what we needed to do at the time was to build a client so that we could talk to the substrate node. That repo, that the first time actually we got a grant for developing this was backed from the Web3 Foundation. So it was a grant from the legal foundation back then. And then we actually submitted a proposal to the Treasury to just continue maintaining it, and Parity was doing so many updates to Substrate that we really struggled to keep up. But it was really cool because now actually I just checked, there's 92 forks, there's 120 stars on GitHub, there's 130 commits. It's last been updated like 2 weeks ago. We're preparing to release another major update once we launch the parachain, and we also have to update and make sure that it's all compatible. But I think that's like one of the things that the council does, to come to my question, is the grants program or the treasury proposals. I wanted to maybe ask you, like, generally, what was your experience with the grants program for Polkadot and Kusama, and like what would you recommend for like Centrifuge to how to think about, and this, what we launched with grants first on Altair. Actually, the Treasury palette is already included there, if I'm correct, or at least it's coming very soon. And so maybe, yeah, what are tips for like for kickstarting a grants program and doing that in the council?
So I always find first it's really hard to scale up, right, the Treasury process, because if you get too many treasury proposals, you have to know that, like, I'm not sure how the composition of your networks in the consoles are, but the composition of the consoles for the relay chains are basically people that have a day job, right? Like they also have a day job that they need to cover and whatnot. And they also need to check and review and evaluate the proposals and whatnot. So we started very slow. Like, I think the 4th one that was yours was for $50,000 US dollars at the moment. And right now we're seeing proposals of, I mean, the last bounty proposal on Polkadot was funded with, like, I think at the time worth $18 million in USD. And so I think the key here is to stick to the structure that will scale up. If you can find a good way of submitters to understand what kind of information they need to give to the console in order for the console to have easy access to the information and to what they can do, then that's great. In general terms, the treasury proposals on the relay chain is one of the mechanisms that we use to spend the treasury, right? Then we have bounties mechanism, and then we have tipping mechanism. The bounty mechanism is the one that I'm most excited about, and I'll tell you why later, because it scales up really easily. But for spending proposals, what happens is that we have 4 general steps, right? The first one is the proposer will draft a treasury proposal. In general, a treasury proposal has a very simple structure, which doesn't mean not a lot of information, only a simple structure of like, what is the problem they envision, what's the solution, and what are the milestones to reach that solution. That should be the basic structure of a treasury proposal, at least in our case on Polkadot and Kusama. And the reason is because originally the treasuries on Polkadot and Kusama were destined to fund teams that are finding issues or problems on the network, or that add a value to the network. But in general, the original idea was to fund public infrastructure. So projects that are open source and that are essential for the network, like explorers or open source wallet integrations or development, but that they don't have a business model behind it and that they need funds to keep ongoing. So the idea was to set up a basic structure for a proposal. And this proposal has 3 parts, as I told you: problem, solution, milestones. And the milestones, you would budget them, right? So each milestone will have a particular allocation that you need to submit that milestone, and then a timeline, an estimated timeline. Once you would have this proposal, you would publish it off-chain, kind of like the same way as you guys have the off-chain coordination. And the reason why we publish this off-chain before submitting on-chain is to minimize the risk of rejection. And why is this? Now, the relay chain treasuries, they have a particular thing in order to avoid spamming the network, in order for people to spam the network all the time. And this anti-spam measure is called the bond. So when the proposer submits an on-chain proposal, they need to bond 5% of what they're asking. So if you're asking for, I don't know, $100, you would need to bond the 5% of that 100 that needs to be in the account of the proposer. So when you submit on-chain, this 5% will be locked. Now, if the proposal is approved, all good, because then the bond will get free. But if the proposal is rejected, what happens is that the bond is slashed and it goes to the treasury to fund future projects. So the reason why we have this off-chain publication first is so council members and the community can give as much feedback as possible. Once they have given all of their feedback, and then the team has incorporated this feedback, then they can move forward and submit on chain, and then a council member will pass it as a motion and approve it or reject it, hopefully approve it. Now, this is only one method that we have. This is only one mechanism. And this scales up, the off-chain coordination process scales up really well. But the problem is that we cannot expect council members that are non-paid advisors or politicians on chain, so to say, to review, evaluate, and have the responsibility to make sure that everything in the proposal is correct, because either they don't have time sometimes, or they don't have the expertise to review all of the proposals that come on our way. You have to know that we have 8 categories of funding in the treasury spending proposals. This include not only public infrastructure, but also marketing activities and events and hackathons and wallet integrations and cross-chain application development, a lot of things. And all council members don't have all the expertise. And so we came up with an idea that we call the bounties mechanism, right? Actually, the original, the person who had the original idea was Emil from Polkascan Foundation. Polkascan is the explorer for Polkadot and Kusama. And this was about 2 years ago. And this original idea had the goal of delegating the responsibilities the council has with a spending proposal review and evaluation to a curator. Okay, so if you think of bounties, you will think, okay, like a bug bounty program where people submit their buggy, they found a bug in the code and then they get rewarded. Yes, it can be that, but actually there is a misuse of the bounty concept here. We just call it the bounty mechanism because Emil started calling it like that, so it just stick to us. But in general, the goal of this mechanism is the console will open a bounty, which means that they will allocate a particular portion of the treasury that will be earlocked in the treasury to a category or a scope of work. And then once this is approved and active, the console will select a bounty curator. And by selecting this bounty curator, which technically is an address, is a Polkadot or a Kusama address, but speaking more broadly, is an expert in the scope of work of the bounty, then this curator has the ability to manage the funds autonomously, which means that they can get the applications of people who want to work in the scope of work, then review the processes, review the proposals, and then either approve an allocation for them or not. And of course, getting paid for it. The curator also has a reward for the job of being a curator, which council members do not have. So all in all, there are a lot of challenges at the moment. We have a process that works, but the issue is that we are not spending fast enough, okay? And one of the reasons we encounter this problem is because councillors do not have a lot of time. So in the next runtime upgrade, which is 0916, this will happen on Kusama, hopefully this week, and then on Polkadot next week, if everything goes well on Kusama, we're adding one more palette that will link to the bounties palette that already exists. And this palette is called the child bounties palette. And this will allow curators to actually divide a bounty allocation in different areas and scope of work. And in that way, finally budget the treasury in a way that we can scale up spending. But I mean, I agree with Robert in the sense that it is so important to have an off-chain coordination mechanism the same way as an on-chain coordination mechanism. The on-chain process can definitely form the consensus, but it's important to test the waters or to take the temperature, as Kate say, in order to understand what is the position of council members and the community, so we can protect people from spending tokens in vain, right? Sorry, that was a bit long, I think.
No, that's amazing. That's amazing, actually. That's great information. Yeah, I mean, maybe I can follow that up with, this is actually a question from Kate, which was, you know, I know you have the anti-spam bond and you have the slashing for that purpose, but so what can we do actually, you know, in the event that, you know, people don't follow the process or the on-chain process? I mean, obviously in most cases they won't garner enough votes anyways for the proposal to pass, but do you have any sort of, any other sort of method for that, for kind of mitigating that problem?
So, I mean, the anti-spam mechanism is one. We have anti-spam mechanisms for any type of proposal that it's submitted in the relay chain, not only treasury proposals, but also bounties, also tips in different levels, of course. To submit a tip is much cheaper than to submit a treasury proposal for a particular allocation. But also, if you want to submit, for example, a public proposal that will be voted in referenda, and before it gets voted, it needs to be seconded. In general, that will cost you to lock 100 dots. And anyone who seconds it will need to lock as well 100 dots. So anti-spam mechanisms work. But sometimes people do not even realize, right, that they're bonding 100 dots when they submit a proposal. And so education is key here. Every time that you talk about submitting a proposal, every time that you run through your community with treasury proposals or with referenda, you need to let them know that blockchain is not free, right? So there's limited space, there's limited storage space in the network, and so you need to pay for the space, and that's the way you do so. Besides the transaction fees, of course, I would say the experience of having earlier higher anti-spam fees. So in the case of Kusama, we had higher anti-spam fees before for treasury proposals. Didn't really work out because in general, treasury proposals are submitted by teams that have great ideas, but they don't have the funds. So if they don't have the funds, they don't have the bond. So then what do you do in order to make sure that they can submit? So we lowered the bond on Kusama, and we're setting up a cap with this new runtime upgrade as well now with the next one on Polkadot. And so far, so good. Of course, you find some people that jump, they don't go to the off-chain discussion and they jump to the on-chain submission right away. You also find people that do not add the contextual information in the forums. And so that's complicated because then councillors and the community do not have what they're voting on. In general, those proposals get rejected and the submitter loses the bond. So that's what happens. So in order for them not to lose, I would say education is key. Keep repeating that blockchains are not free, and eventually they will get it. But also take into account that in general, people that submit treasury proposals are people who are working on open source projects, who are looking for extra funds without having to maybe compromise the product integrity because they're not sponsored by ABC or sponsored by someone that has an interest in particular in the product. And so in general, when they start, this is a kickoff grant and they look for funds and they don't have the submission money, so to say. So it's important that we also are accommodative to them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, of course, being proactive with education on all the channels is a good
I mean,
measure.
I've heard Bill. I mean, we all know Bill Laboon, right? He's a technical educator at Web3 Foundation, and he was talking 2 days ago on a Twitter space with Polka House. This group of guys work great, and they meet every Tuesday to discuss different topics on Twitter space. And he said something that's really right. Like Web3 technologies and blockchain in particular, and we envision that this technology will give us a lot of rights that we have lost over these years, but that also comes with a lot of responsibility, right? And we always need to take this into account. People sometimes forget that the responsibility is parallel to these rights, and it doesn't work that way in the paradigm that we're talking about now. So we have to take that into account. But education would be first for me.
Yeah. And like Kate says, with great rights come great responsibilities.
Yeah, Spider-Man. See,
exactly.
like...
So we have a question from one of our ambassadors, Rana. Rana, do you want to?
Yeah. The question is regarding a council. You mentioned earlier that not everyone possesses the knowledge about every aspect of a project. So in your opinion and experience, what knowledge do you think is important for council members, or what qualities should they possess?
So I don't think all councillors should be developers. I don't think that should be the case. I think we need to have a wide variety of council members in the composition, but I do think that those who are not developers should know the functioning and the mechanics of how the network works. They don't need to read the code. I don't read the code. I'm not a developer. I don't have a technical background. But I am in contact with people that can explain to me. I read how it works. I understand the economics of the networks, and I understand the implications for right or wrong, or for yes or no in a particular proposal. But this is also why it's so important that proposers share the contextual information. And the contextual information is not, I want to increase the validator set to 60. The contextual information is, I want to increase the validator set to 60. These are the possible implications of this decision. These are the pros, these are the cons. Take into account this and this. This is the number of validators. You have to give a full picture. And this is what I try to do with counselors and the community when there's not a full picture on what they're voting. In general, I would say that you don't need to be a developer. I think it's important that we also have community members in the council that are, I don't know, experts in marketing or experts in business development or experts in math or, you know, different things, researchers. That would be ideal. But if you want to be a council member on a chain, then you should know how the chain works. That would be like the basic. And then you should know the implications of the different calls. And you should understand the mechanics. You should understand what is an extrinsic, what is a call, what does it mean to stake? What does it mean to nominate? What do I win? How do the economics of the network works? Where all of these funds from treasury are coming from, right? How does the community decide on a change for this call? And what about this one? All of these things should be considered in order to submit your council member candidacy. And it's important that you have like an ideal scenario in place that you want to reach when you propose or you vote on proposals. But I don't think they should be developers only.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's fair. Makes sense. I think Rano is a math teacher actually. When you mentioned math, so
Yeah, I'm a math teacher.
Nice.
Yeah,
I mean, math experts and economics experts are very, very handy when you want to, for example, propose a change on the staking design or in the economics of the networks, because then they will let you know all of the implications of that small change. It's really, really good. And it's always good to surround yourself with people that are in the ecosystem that have different opinions and that are experts on different things. So for example, if I want to submit a proposal because I have an idea or we need to change something on the network, I will go to many different people, right? Many different people to ask for their opinion about the proposal, and then I will assess if it makes sense or not. Because we cannot be experts on everything, right? I don't know anyone who's an expert on everything. I mean, they say Rano is an expert on everything, but I don't know him, so I don't know.
They're lying.
Cool.
Well, thank you for the thorough answer, Raul. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Maybe Raul, I have actually two questions. The first one is maybe the simpler one. Besides runtime upgrades, staking parameters, and treasury, are there any other major functions that the Polkadot Council has today, or that you think of that you think on-chain governance is important in?
Those three things have been like the most prominent ones that we have had so far. Emergency upgrades is a big one. As we know, substrate chains allow us to upgrade effortlessly or almost effortlessly without a hard fork. So the participation of the governance modules on emergency upgrades are very, very important. We have had a few proposals on Kusama mainly to create new collectives. As you might all know, I don't know if you guys are aware, there is a collective on Kusama that's called the Kappa Sigma Mu Society. And the Kappa Sigma Mu Society, it's basically a society of people who are hardcore fanatics of Kusama. And they kind of like created this human chain, but by verifying their identities with different POIs, what we call it, which is like basically a tattoo. that you have to get in order to become a member, and then your membership will be recorded on chain. So the creation of new collectives, as I told you, for example, the addition of new mechanisms to spend the treasury, for example, it's another one. The bounties mechanism was not there originally. We designed it from scratch to scale up on treasury spending. So it's a lot of things. Ideally, I mean, I know you guys also have a console. Ideally, console has very limited power to change anything in the network. And all of the power should be, yeah, you need a society as well. All of the power should be or is in the democracy module, which is basically the collective of token holders. And in general, the console is there to kind of like facilitate the discussion and facilitate the vote on a different type of proposals. If we want to change something on the runtime, if we want to change a parameter, if we want to change the staking elements, we need democracy module in order to make this pass and to be executed. What the console does is change the voting bias when it comes to the referenda. So if there would be a public proposal, for example, that would have absolute majority on Polkadot and Kusama, if the console passes it and approves it first, and then it goes to referenda, it would have a simple majority. So as a representative of passive stakeholders, the console allows and facilitates that.
This is actually something that I think is very tricky with parachains. I'm very unhappy that all of the that a lot of people who are supporting Centrifuge, right, and that could actually act in Centrifuge's interests within the Polkadot ecosystem and affect democracy votes in Polkadot. A lot of them, of course, actually helped Centrifuge get the parachain and contributed their dot to the crowd loan. And I'd say that, and I know quite a few of those who did that, and so they can't vote anymore. And so like either our supporters and even the parachain itself, right, is sort of not represented well at all within Polkadot, at least on chain. Is there anything that you're planning on doing to like change that? Have you considered allowing?
So I mean, the crowd loans module originally, yeah, it's true. If you support a project and you contribute to a crowd loan, then your token's unlocked and you lose the right to participate in governance and to stake those tokens, right? Because they're locked. There was a bit of a discussion at Parity, I think, and also throughout the community at some point of what about if we give the governance models of each of the parachains the power that they have in their crowd loans, right? So what if the console of Centrifuge could vote with the power of the contributed tokens for their lease, right? And there were some difficulties in implementing this. Quite honestly, I don't know where that discussion ended up. I think it was agreed that if you participate in a crowd loan, you lose your right of governance. But this might change with some of the other solutions that the parachains have, right? Maybe not in crowd loans, but on staking with Liquid Dot and Liquid Kusama and all of these things, right? Yeah, but I don't remember where that ended. I'm gonna make a note and ping Sean because he will remember. So yeah.
Cool. I mean, yeah, maybe, and sorry, I've been hogging all the questions, but maybe then I will answer the question I wanted to ask you originally, Raul. What's the future of governance in Polkadot?
Yeah, so India also has a question here. Says, I have a question. In your opinion, how many councillors do you think are optimal for a console? I would say none. So okay, the current design on the relay chains, and I think for Centrifuge is quite similar, is we have a 3-model design, right? So what this means is we have a console, we have a democracy module, which is the token holders, and then we have a technical committee. And it works more or less the same way as in Centrifuge, in which the console can initiate legislation. The TC cannot actually propose anything, but only fast track, delay, or cancel. And the democracy module can actually propose or follow up on legislation the council initiated and ultimately executed. There's been a lot of debate in the past year and a half about what's the council's role, right? Initially, the council is thought as a way of representing passive stakeholders. But then a lot of people say like, yeah, okay, like I understand the idea of representation, and the first model is kind of like a hybrid between representation and direct participation. But the community wants to, or so they say, we'll see when this happens, the community wants to participate, right? They want to discuss and they want to propose legislation and they want to vote on legislation. And so the idea eventually is, and I can say this because the PR I think is already public, to gradually replace the council with a more complex democracy module. So first, to answer your question, Indio, I think the bigger the council, the better, because there's more diversity. We've seen it, for example, on Kusama. We have a much more diverse council than we have on Polkadot. However, Polkadot is getting much better now, but we have 19 members on Kusama and it works really well. We have very different opinions, very different visions. While in Polkadot, we have 13 members so far, and it works really well, but in general, the opinion is homogeneous, right? So I think that for diversity and discussion and debate, and to finally get to what's best for the network and the community, a bigger council is always better, up to, I would say, 25 council members, 30 council members, maybe not more than that, because if not, then you should like, the coordination problems become bigger and bigger, right? And then there is the problem of asymmetric information and all of this. So gradually what's going to happen is if the community approves the runtime upgrade and the proposal that the teams are working on, then what will happen is that the democracy module should replace the work of the council. And the way it's going to work is basically we're going to have different calls, right? We have different calls in the relay chain that we can submit as public proposals. And basically to keep it like simple, so I don't extend in the explanation, but these different calls would have different thresholds and different majorities, therefore different root origins. So basically what this means is that if you want to submit a proposal that the democracy module might eventually vote, the threshold and the majority to pass this particular proposal will depend on if this is a treasury proposal call. Well, if it's a runtime upgrade call, if it's like a set code call extrinsic, then what will happen is that the threshold and the majority will be different as well. So there will be more complex calls to be passed and more simple calls to be passed. We will have like a submission period in which people can vote, or they present the proposal and then people vote up to a month, I think, or a month and a half for Polkadot or something like this. But basically speaking, calls will have different routes, so therefore different thresholds and majorities. And eventually, my hope is that all of what the council is doing right now will also pass to the community to be voted, and then the council will eventually be dissolved, right? That would be the idea. Now, there are other components in this particular design in order to work properly. The technical committee, I think, will stay there at least for the beginning in order to control and make sure that the code that is being passed works and whatnot. And also there will be major roles of delegation mechanisms. The delegation is something that we have right now on Polkadot and Kusama. For those who don't know, if let's say you have a bunch of tokens, but you don't have time to vote, you don't have time to check the contextual information, you can delegate those tokens to me through a call delegation. The tokens do not leave your account, they're only locked, and the delegation call makes that the voting power is to whatever I vote. Now the delegation calls will be a bit different as well. If the community approves, then we will have different types of delegations, and so delegation will become much more important in that sense. So that's basically the main idea. The idea and the goal is to be able to create a governance model that's much more dynamic, much more transparent, and much more decentralized. So that's the main idea behind this. So it's a gradual step towards decentralization.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for the very complete answer there. Absolutely. We're at an hour, so Raul, I'm not sure if you're able to stay for a few more minutes.
Yeah, sure.
Anybody who needs to go, thanks for being on the call, and see you next time. But I think we can maybe do another question or two. Lucas, do you have another question?
I'll leave it up to others. I think there are some more, maybe.
Okay, well, I had a kind of a general question. It's kind of a few questions in one. It was, what if, I mean, how do we incentivize more people to participate in governance? And could that involve something like a governance hub? Something I think we're kind of looking at. Lucas had shared the MakerDAO governance hub, which is pretty clean and easy to use. And I know, Raul, you tweeted recently about Litentry was building
Litentry.
Yeah, UI, UX. And so I mean, so maybe like as these tools kind of evolve, you know, perhaps the governance process is a little bit intimidating for people, maybe like it's slightly technical.
Yeah.
And the effort that's required to put in, but maybe as you know, as we develop ways to like centralize everything into one page, and maybe, you know, even at some point, you know, develop a different UI. Could you maybe comment on that?
Yeah, so there are different things you can do. You have different levels of things that you can do, right? So the first thing you can do is educate people. That's like the first one, right? Education. Provide as much information as possible so people can vote in an educated way. Now, there's a lot of people who do not understand how to use Polkadot.js apps. A lot of people say it's a monster because it's so complex. I've been using it for a very long time. I don't think it's that complex, and I think it's a great tool, but it's true that it can be very intimidating. So education on how to use that first, because it has the biggest functionalities for substrate chains that we know so far, but also promoting the development of new UI and new UX, that it's simpler, right? That's very important. At the moment, we are with the Treasury supporting and funding projects that are focused on UI and UX, especially not only on governance, but also on other things as well, on staking. Staking is also complicated for a lot of people on Polkadot.js apps. And so we also are funding proposals for user interfaces that make this simpler, or that makes the user experience more attractive, to attract users to participate on governance. And one of the examples is Litentry app, right? And Litentry is a team that's been working for a while already in the Kusama and the Polkadot ecosystem. And they recently developed an application, a mobile application, in which you can interact with all of the governance modules, right? So you can go there, you can inject your account via an external QR code, or if you want to put your private seed key, you can do so as well. But right now it's on beta testing, so don't do that yet. You can vote on proposals, you can vote on referenda, you can propose referenda, you can propose bounties, you can propose spending proposals, you can check on the contextual information. If you're a council member, you can vote on council motions, you can tip, and you can vote on your councillors. So that's really, really cool. I think it's easier for a user to have a mobile app and be able to check anywhere. For me, at least, it's really cool now because I can go anywhere, and with the phone, I check all the time. I don't know if it's healthy, but it's easier. And then besides the user experience and the user interface projects, it's also very important to incentivize people, right? Like we always talk about the rational choice nominators and validators should make when they think about who to nominate or who to validate, you know, or the rational choice of how to administer the tokens on the networks and so on. And for a lot of people, it's also a matter of rational choice, right? Like if you're voting or something, if you're voting on referenda, you're paying fees. And then maybe people don't see the direct consequences of the referenda in these fees. And so it's also important to incentivize them economically. This can go both ways. It can be really good or it can be really bad. We have tried different types of incentives mechanism. Sean Tabrisi developed something that's called the lotteries ballot, which allows governance to open a lottery for particular calls. So for example, if they open a lottery with a particular goal to reward someone that has voted on referenda in that session, then they open a lottery and they take an allocation from the treasury, and then the lottery award is given to one of all of the voters of the lottery, because the voters have the option to purchase a ticket and wrap it to their vote when they vote on on-chain referenda. So that's one incentive, for example, right? But then how do you avoid people just voting whatever just to buy a lottery ticket, right? That's another problem. So then you have a second problem there. Or for example, Will, who's Parity's master of validators, who I think he's usually in this call, he designed an incentive mechanism for validators that are part of the 1000 validator program. And this means that if they vote on referenda in the current periods, or if they vote for council members, they will get extra points and they will be able to go higher in the score. So then the funds from Web3 Foundation that are destined to this particular program can nominate them. So incentives like that, along with a combination of good UI and UX, which of course will take time because, you know, it's blockchain technology, so it will take time. And education, I think it's central, but it takes time.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. Yeah. I mean, as things evolve, yeah, it'll become more and more streamlined and easier to use for the average user, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but thanks for that answer. I think we can probably wrap up now. Thank you so much, Raul, for all the information. It's extremely educational.
Thank you. If you need anything, you know where to find me. So yeah.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Raul. That was really informative.
I hope so. If you need any other type of information, you can always find me in Element. You will find me in the Polkadot Direction channel, in the Kusama Direction channel, in the water coolers. Just go there if you need anything or ask questions. If you have questions about the treasury, how it works, if you want to apply for funds, if you don't know who to vote, just go and we can provide you with all of the info.
Thank you, Raul. Definitely. We will take up that offer.
No problem.
Yeah. And thanks everyone for joining the call. See you next month.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Robert. Great job.
Thanks.
Right, stop recording now.